Well, hello. So great. I see that we have the Kleiman family, we have Agudemu, and we have Melissa. And Jerry, I see that you've maybe unmuted. So what we'll do is maybe have each of our community panelists take a few minutes to tell us whatever you want to share about your story and your experience, whether as a cochlear implant user or a family member or a parent or a child. So Jerry, we will start with you. If you would like to tell us a little bit about your story, that would be wonderful.
Okay. My name is Jerry Lapidagus, and I live in Stoughton and have been here quite a while, have two grown daughters and four grandkids, and I've been dealing with my hearing loss. I got my first hearing aid in 1999, and it's affected. They say hearing loss shouldn't affect your life, but it does, and it shouldn't. Anyway, I retired from DNR as a forester, and I worked on a couple part-time jobs after that. And the hearing became more and more challenging as the years went by. In 2013, I tried a number of different hearing aids. And in 2013, I went deaf on the right side, and then I used a cross system, which helped a little bit to get a little spatial understanding on that other side. And then finally, the challenge to get a CI was something, especially when you're older. Medicare is not very amenable to getting CIs. So it took quite a struggle. I finally got approved for it in 2019. So I've had my CI for 3 years, and it's just been, you hear people say life changing, and it really, really is. Prior to getting implanted, I did have to change a lot of my social interactions and dropped off of a town commission, couldn't do community theater anymore, all kinds of stuff like that that really affects you. So anyway, that's pretty much my story. I'm living now with a hearing aid on one side and a CI, which works quite well. There's some problems, but it works quite well.
Thank you so much, Jerry, for telling us your story. Agudemu, would you like to unmute? And I also want to publicly congratulate Agudemu, who is a cochlear implant user, for successfully defending his PhD yesterday.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So my name is Agudemu, and I am currently a PhD student at Purdue University, and I am studying auditory neuroscience. And one fun fact is I will be soon working with Dr. Litovsky after my graduation in May. So I am a bilateral cochlear implant user, and my cochlear implants are from Bilateral. So I'm from China originally, and I lost my hearing when I was 19, when I was sophomore. So I had almost a little bit more than 18 years of acoustic hearing. So I lost my hearing almost all of a sudden. So I first went to SoundBridge because the doctors thought that I would be a good candidate for that. But after the implantation of that SoundBridge, after the activation, I could not hear really well. So we moved on to cochlear implants. So I did my first cochlear implants really very soon after my hearing loss, about like 2 months or so. And then I went back to school, and I was using only one cochlear implant throughout my undergraduate education. And then I came to US after graduation for my master's degree in electrical engineering. And then I found everything was so difficult. I think probably because, mainly because the language is so different. And then that really was the motivation for me to have a second cochlear implant. So I went back to China during winter break and then had my second cochlear implantation. So there's like a 3-year gap between first and second. And I always think that, I still think that the second side is slightly not as good as the first one. So yeah, I really wish that I had 2 implantations all at once. So yeah, so so if you have the resources, I really recommend doing both implantations at the same time, because if you have a certain period, I think it's really because of that deafness period, and then within that deafness period, your auditory system sort of degrades during that without any income stimulations. So yeah, so that's pretty much my story.
Thank you so much for that, Agudemu. I would now like to invite the Kleinman family, and I see that all 3 of you are here, so we'll let you decide who, if all 3 or just one of you want to talk. That would be wonderful.
We're gonna let Jude take the lead.
Perfect. Hi, Jude. Nice to see you.
Yeah, you too. All right, so hi, my name is Jude. I am 11 years old and I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I was born with complete deafness in my right ear and hearing in my left. When I was in first grade, I got a cross hearing aid because I noticed it was hard to hear in like situations where it was noisy, like the cafeteria at school or like a group discussion in class where input is coming from a lot of places at once. And I got my implant my cochlear implant about a year ago. I was supposed to get it in 2020, but the pandemic pushed that back to 2021. And so it's been about a year. And at first, like, it's kind of hard, like, to hear sound and like you get headaches sometimes. But as you go on, like I do therapy once a week to just have some practice listening with just that ear, and it gets better, and like it's been really helping me. Do you guys want to talk?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I would just echo everything that that Jude said. When he was born, we didn't have any experience with hearing loss, so it was, a new, journey for us, and so we were just, just really focused on kind of what he needed. And actually, when he was born, we took him, to an ENT, and she basically said to us, there's nothing, this was 2011. And she said to us, there's really nothing to do right now. Just go home and enjoy your baby. And at that point, they weren't doing implants for children with single-sided deafness. And so, that's pretty much what we did. We went home and enjoyed our baby. And, we were very fortunate. He acquired normal speech, and language skills, seemingly very easily, as a toddler. And so we really didn't see, really the implications, I guess, of the SSD until he was really kind of in school, and then getting into, as he said, like in kind of kindergarten and first grade, and sort of, having a little bit of difficulty like in the noisy environments. And that's when we really started down the path, of the cross hearing aid, and then, the implant.
Thank you so much, Jude and Melissa. And I see that Seth has left, so we'll move on to Melissa. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa. I have a 6-year-old daughter named Vivian. We call her Vivi, who has bilateral cochlear implants. And so when she was born in 2016, she initially passed her newborn hearing exam. So we really had no idea that she was actually deaf until she was almost 1. And her babbling wasn't progressing. Her speech obviously wasn't progressing. She has an older brother. So we had seen, the normal progression of babbling and to speech with him. And, finally we couldn't quite, it seemed like she was turning to sound, when the doorbell would ring, it seemed like she would look sometimes. She also wasn't responding to her name. And so I said to one of my friends at work, I'm not sure that Vivi can hear. She said, go home and bang pots behind her head. I did, and she didn't turn around. So we figured out that she was actually using visual cues. Like when the doorbell rang, our dog would run to the door. So she would see the dog run and look like she was trying. If she saw us come into the room, she would turn and look at us, but she wasn't hearing us. So that started our whole journey. And also we don't have any deafness in our family. So it was a whole new world to us. And so she was bilaterally implanted with Cochlear when she was about 1.5. And now, it was a long journey with a lot of intensive therapy, speech therapy, auditory training, all the therapies we could get. And we did start, because we knew there was going to be about a 6-month period between our recognition of her deafness and when she could get implants. The insurance company made us go through hearing aid trials and all of that. We started learning sign immediately, and her personality blossomed when we started signing with her, and she started signing back. And now with her bilateral implants, she's receptive to sign. Like when she takes her processors off, we will sign to her, but she really doesn't communicate to us. She's not expressive with sign. She's very oral and oral. And she's doing great. She's in kindergarten. She's basically, at grade level or above for reading and math. She's got a spunky little personality, which we remind ourselves is good. And yeah, so we have been the lucky recipients of the therapies at UW, both audiology and their amazing speech therapy program. So we're just grateful to all of you all audiologists and professionals. So
Thank you. That's so wonderful to always hear the updates. Yeah. Let's see. What kind of questions do we have from our audience to any of our participants? So what I see here is from David Seligman. How long does it take for an adult with bilateral hearing aids to get comfortable with one cochlear implant? How long does the cochlear implant approval process take? So, Sarah, would you like to try to answer that one?
Sure. So it again is variable on how quickly someone adapts to the new electrical input. I like to counsel people that, again, it takes about 12 months to obtain like peak performance with this new hearing modality. We often see the largest jump in the first 3 months, and then continued improvement from 3 to 6, and then a little more from 6 to 12. And really by 12 to 18 months, you obtain peak performance listening with one cochlear implant and one hearing aid. Now, there are some things that we counsel people to do to adapt to the electrical hearing more quickly. One being practice. So, oral rehabilitation, doing listening exercises. There's a lot of great ones that are available online, regardless of manufacturer of device. Insurance is variable, so it depends on your insurance. The vast majority, I would say, that I see come through our clinic at UW are approving at least one cochlear implant. And I would say the process from when you come in to get an eval to when we actually activate you can take anywhere from 4 to 12 months.
Mhm. That's great. And thank you so much. And do any of our panelists from the community panel want to talk about their own experience? Jude, I saw you shaking your head a little bit, and you had talked about the past year. And I know you're not an adult yet, you're a child.
Yeah. So I think when you're still a child, like sometimes I wish I could have gotten my implant younger because it's probably easier to adjust when you're younger. But I am super thankful for it. It can be troublesome, I should say, at times, but it's really worth it to get.
Thank you. Jerry or Agudemo, if you would like to talk about the question that just came up before we move on to the next question.
I'm sorry, which question?
So we're talking a little bit about the question from David Seligman. How
Oh.
long does it take for an adult
Okay.
with bilateral hearing aids to get comfortable with the CI?
Yeah, well, it's almost instantaneous. I mean, I agree that, of course, once they turn the implant on, they just seem to work together pretty well. There really wasn't any lag and understanding. They work together quite well. I don't know what else to say about that.
Great. Thank you for that. Agudemo?
So I did not have any experience with hearing aids. I just went straight to cochlear implants after my hearing loss. And then for the process to get approval, I didn't need to get approval because my insurance simply didn't cover any of the costs associated with that cochlear implantation. Because as I mentioned, I'm from China, and then my cochlear implants are from Bilateral, which is a foreign product. So yeah, insurance in China just doesn't cover any of those products from foreign countries. Yeah, so I just didn't go through that reimbursement process and approval process. We just paid out of pocket for the entire thing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a quite financial burden for our family, but yeah, I think there is a new cochlear implant company coming up in China. It's called Bilateral.
Yep.
So hopefully that would sort of ease some family burdens for financial burdens for other families. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. Now, I think that what we're going to do is go back up a little bit in the question to the panelists, because there was a question right after Lucas finished speaking from Linda, I think, which said, so this is why I should seat myself with restaurant noise behind me. Is that right? I think, Lucas, that followed right after your presentation. And I don't know if you want to address that directly.
Yeah,
here.
sure.
Yeah.
So first I'll say, Shelley, the way the chat just keeps going, I think it may have been missed, but Shelley had some nice input there.
Yeah.
But I think that does speak to the use of what we would call communication strategies and just the way that we position ourselves. So yeah, the way we're able to, as much as we're able to spatially separate background noise, like Linda suggested, by physically removing that from the speech target or our communication partner that we want to talk to. Yes, that is why. If we are able to physically separate speech from noise, then that is one way to improve the ability to understand our communication partners. Yes, so you're exactly right. And Jerry, please.
it's really important. We have strategies, and my wife is so supportive in this. When you go to a restaurant and right away say, you know, I have a problem. We need to quiet. Could we have another table, please? Where do I sit? Do I sit with my back against the wall? Do I try to get in a corner? What's the best position? And then when we're with other people, then that really is a challenge. Who do you want on your implant side? And and noise is very significant. That's probably one of the biggest problems, is dealing with noise. But yeah, there's so many little strategies that we use, and I know all others do too.
Thank you so much. Jude, would you like to answer that question as well?
Yes. So for restaurant noise or just noise in general, I like to point my hearing ear generally in the direction of the people I'm with, so I can hear most of them, because with the implant, it does have a lot of like background noise reduction just added in there. And so obviously your normal ear doesn't. So it helps for me to just point my hearing ear where the other people are.
And would you say that's because that's your better ear, your hearing ear? So you want that to face toward the speech?
I would say that, yeah, right now, since I think I've been with this implant for only about like a year. This is my better ear right now.
Good. Yeah. And I see that Paula wrote face away from the window at a restaurant. So thank you. Now we have a question from Carol Lee, which I'll read out. I understand that 2 cochlear implants facilitate better hearing, but this question is about the time that it might take to adjust and whether that's a concern at the age of 87. I should have added that I've had my cochlear implant since 2008 and wondering how this would be if I got another one. I wonder if one of our clinicians want to answer that question. Sarah, maybe? Or Karen, you have so much expertise with sequential, but mostly with children. Why don't we see what Sarah and then maybe Karen have to say?
Yeah, so from the clinical perspective, I don't think there's ever an age that's too old. I think there are, again, a number of things, regardless of age, regardless of duration of deafness, that are going to help improve listening through a new modality bilaterally, and that is just wearing the device. So number of hours you utilize the device is going to heavily impact. And then what I often counsel patients is spend an hour a day with dedicated practice with listening with your new ear. And then when you're out in the real world, listen with both, because that's ultimately how your brain is going to want to hear. But we need to dedicate some practice with just listening to that new implanted ear in order to help it maybe never catch up, but get closer to your better ear.
I think that's really important. What Sarah's talking about is that listening with one ear is hard. So having access to sound in both is just a help. It may not, you may always have a better hearing ear, and we've heard that discussed really well by the panelists their user experience, but still better than listening only from the one side alone. So I think the motivation is really an important part. Just keeping the device on, as Sarah said, is really one of the major keys. Not to give up when there's, it's going to be different at the beginning. And if you have the right expectations of how it will be, then that will really help.
That's a those are really great points from Drs. Miserelli and Gordon. I will add that I have seen a similar situation clinically to what you're describing. And yeah, I think it's so important in terms of setting expectations prior to moving forward with that. And it also is very important to know where you are in terms of your hearing ability through the acoustic hearing you're currently. So I would say certainly that is a good topic of conversation with your audiologist, just because everybody is so different. And yeah, you can't generalize one experience to another, but yeah, certainly like Sarah said, there's no age where you can't do it. So I'd say it's definitely worth having the conversation.
I hope that answers the question. Let's see. Paula said, I got my first CI at 2008 at age 60 and the second one at 2010. For quality of life, even in one's 80s, I would encourage considering getting cochlear implants. So I think that confirms, I think what's lovely is that people in their 70s, 80s, 90s and older are quite active these days. And so if you have an active lifestyle and you're out there in the world communicating with people and you want to be able to hear, then it's never too late. In fact, it's only better to be able to enhance our communication skills. Are there any other questions or comments from our audience, or do any of our panelists have any questions for each other?
There's one other question in the Q&A.
Oh, I may have missed it.
That was from Lauren Trevner.
Oh, I'm so sorry. They're scrolling down. I'm scrolling through them. Thank you for noticing that. Would you like to read it out for us, Karen?
Sure. This is a really interesting question about differences in the nerve or cochlea. And the question is, I don't think this is too common of a scenario. I've seen it more lately. It may come up with patients at risk of hearing loss of the normal hearing ear or extremely motivated patients with single-sided deafness. And I think that this is an important one because it's true there are many different reasons for hearing loss and deafness. And we're learning a lot more about this with respect to cochlear implantation. So the question around whether you have enough of a nerve and a cochlea to fit a cochlear implant is important. And that's part of the candidacy that we go through for every person, child and adult, who is exploring cochlear implants. And I think with respect to single-sided deafness, we think about this very carefully because we're learning a lot more about the reasons that somebody can present with single-sided deafness. And it looks to be pretty different in children versus adults. So in children, we have a very common scenario that children can be born without a hearing nerve on one side. So that makes it pretty difficult for them to gain benefit from a cochlear implant. So that's really a huge consideration. On the other hand, what's also pretty common we're learning for single-sided deafness is that there are children who have been exposed to cytomegalovirus. It's a viral infection that will, the most common outcome of that is hearing loss. And it can happen right away. It can happen in one ear, or it can happen later in life. It can progress. So we really watch out for that. And in those patients would have typically normal cochlea and nerves, and they would be often cochlear implant candidates for one or two.
Thank you so much, Karen, for that. I now see that when I open the Q&A, there are more questions and also in the chat. So I'm going back and forth between them now. And I see that Carolee has put some really interesting points in there as well. I have a Medell cochlear implant and losing understanding in both sentences and single words. And this has me concerned. And I think it looks like Shelley, you're typing an answer to that as well. Now, let me say we're a little bit over our time window, but I wanted just to maybe take a couple more minutes and see if any of our parents, for Melissa, or if Jude's parents are there, want to say anything about what it's like now to be parenting a child with a cochlear implant, in terms of mainstreaming and in terms of the challenges of dealing with medical devices, medical device companies, and ways in which you support your child in the world in this way.
Sure, we can start off if you'd like, Ruth.
Sure, I would love that. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Well, let's see. Jude is, a very responsible fifth grader. And so he has really, I would say, taken the lead in terms of, he wears his implant. He remembers to put it on in the morning. He wears it pretty much all day. He takes really good care of it. We do the weekly oral rehabilitation therapy.
Mhm.
And so, we participate in that weekly. We have started doing it actually more virtually, which is beneficial because then the therapist can connect through Bluetooth directly to Jude's implant, which makes the therapy very seamless. When we're in person, there's a lot of kind of like technical stuff and a lot of back and forth and going in and out of the room that sort of reduces the efficiency of the time. So we've actually found that the virtual therapy is very helpful. And then periodically we go to meet in person. Did you want to add something about that?
So online, like telemedicine, they call it, is really helpful because I have here's cord that you plug into your audio link, and you just plug it into your computer. It's basically just transmits the sound from the computer just to this ear, instead of like maybe I can hear the sound through the wall in therapy or something. But also we go in, which just sometimes on the computer, higher sounds, like if you're like have a word with a sound in it, can be harder to hear on the computer.
That is so interesting. So Margot, as a parent, would you say it also releases parents from, the driving, like in a place like Chicago, you'd have to go to the hospital and park, and so it creates it releases your schedule a little bit too.
Yeah, for sure. The telemedicine has been helpful from a scheduling perspective. Also, Jude does a lot of sports. He plays basketball and plays football, and he has a lot of commitments. And we have 2 other kids too, so it's a lot of logistics with the schedule. So the telemedicine is definitely great.
Interesting. Right.
Yeah. We have a really wonderful audiologist who, so I would say before the implant, Jude was going once a year to the audiologist to have his hearing checked, to make sure that his normal hearing ear was stable, which thankfully, it has been his whole life. After the implant, then the visits with the audiologist were pretty frequent. Right post implementation, it's pretty intense in terms of the number of visits with the audiologist, right then just post implantation. Now we are at the point where we're going to go once a year.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that story and for, telling us all about your involvement, both, and Jude, you're just so responsible, which I'm sure makes it easier for your parents.
Yeah,
as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Melissa, would you've had a different experience because, you had such a tiny child who received her implants at a much younger age. So it kind of a different level of parental involvement.
Yeah, it is so nice to hear from Jude, because I can't really ask my daughter what it's like to hear through cochlear implants because she doesn't know any other way. But yes, so I would say early on, it was really helpful to have, we had a deaf and hard of hearing teacher, a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing that would come to our house, and she shared tips from the deaf community. Like, you know, in the hearing culture, you don't go up and tap somebody on the shoulder, and you don't flick the lights, and you don't bang on the floor. Those are all kind of considered rude. So just that mind shift of, oh, those are now strategies I'm using to communicate with my daughter. And we do, you know, we tell people right away, if you know, if she seems to be ignoring you, you might have to go tap her on the shoulder and make sure she's looking at you. So just those kinds of things. I mean, now in retrospect, they seem super obvious, but you know, like I said, we didn't have any deafness in our family or any real, you know, familiarity with hearing loss. And then the other part, as Jude's family indicated, yes, the post-implant period is intense. I did end up, and this, you know, we were in a lucky position. I did end up leaving my job so I could be at home to take her to appointments and to dedicate time to catching her up, because we thought maybe the daycare setting wasn't ideal. We were told, you know, kind of a quiet environment with a lot, talk to her all day long. So we were able to accommodate that. And then we are trying to train her that she is ultimately responsible for, you know, charging her batteries and putting her processor in the dehumidifier and that kind of thing. She's only 6, so it's a challenge. Right now we do have straps that they're usually, you see them on hearing aids, but we put them on her processors because, you know, she's running around on the playground, and we have lost one already. You're kind of granted 1 loss per side from the Cochlear Implant company before you have to pay out of pocket for them. But so that way, most of the time it does catch. If when they fall off, they're dangling from her shirt somewhere. So those kinds of things. And we even use wig tape, like she takes gymnastics. We use wig tape on her ears to, so it's gentle to hold it to the processor to her ear. Otherwise, you know, it is frustrating for her. They're always falling off. Kind of thing. And she's, you know, she was so little that all of those things. Those are kind of the big things I'm thinking about. You know, and masks have been challenging even for me as a normally hearing person. So that was, you know, well, who knows, you know, we all have something to say about that. She did wear, and her teachers were kind enough to wear clear masks, which, so she could see their mouths, but also we have learned too that the plastic impedes sound more than the surgical masks. Anyway, that hopefully that's mostly.
No, I'm glad. I'm glad you brought that up, because the plastic impedes the sound and it fogs up.
Yes.
You know, on the other hand, a lot of people.
On the other hand, it did help her. Like she could.
The lip reading.
Lip reading.
Right.
Those are kind of the big things that come to mind for me right now.
Well, thank you so much. I know that, you know, oh, Jude, go ahead. Yeah, you have your hand up.
Just getting back to the mask thing, like I also found it very hard during COVID, especially when I didn't have my implant, like
the first part of the pandemic.
The first part of it, and also it wasn't necessarily doing a lot because I was still getting used to it. It was very hard, and even if you do have those clear masks, they fog up so easily. Like it is very hard to hear.
Thank you for sharing that. It seems like we don't have a perfect solution. Jerry, you have your hand up.
I wanted to bring up something else. One of the challenges, and that's our technology is wonderful, and we rely on the technology, but with having a hearing aid and a CI, you have the smartphone app with a different device, and then you have hearing aid with a remote control that's different settings. And so that's, especially to get in noise and you want to adjust the settings, you have to adjust the settings on both. So that's a challenge. That's a real challenge. So we love our technology, but it does get in the way sometimes, especially for us older folks. Probably it might be a little more difficult maneuvering I'm going to get a new hearing aid next week,
Mhm.
which will be compatible with my iPhone and my CI. So I'm hoping that resolves some of that issue.
Wonderful, wonderful. I remember several years ago in one of our past Day with Experts on Cochlear Implants, when the Bluetooth technology all of a sudden emerged. And it was all that people could talk about was how much they loved Bluetooth. From their phone to the television, to therapy, to any kind of direct connection that doesn't have to come through room noise, seemed to be a big game changer for a lot of people. So yeah, and I see you guys shaking your head. So well, I can't thank all of you enough for taking time this morning to join us and to share both the science and the clinical expertise and the human experience side of things, from the child to the adult to the parent perspective. Without all of these conversations, I think that we would be missing some of the important parts of having community. And I hope that we'll be able to do this again next year, hopefully in person. Thank you so, so much to everybody. I hope that, and I also want to thank the Weissman Center, Clark, and Teresa for all the work behind the scenes, and to our interpreters for doing a wonderful job, the captioning, and to everybody for leaning into this important space. And really, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.